Welcome to the British Broadcasting Century podcast, a podcast not made by the BBC, but made about its earliest days. If you've not heard us before, we are 111 episodes in, since we began with Marconi, Morse code becoming voice, the BBC idea coming into being, and the firsts of British broadcasting. And that included episode 72, The Truth About Phyllis Twigg. Well, who would have thought that 40 episodes later, what we found on that episode has become the latest Radio 4 drama, penned by me and starring some of the voices you will hear in this episode.
I had a lovely time playing Phyllis Twigg and having a small twig at my side playing my daughter.
She was wonderful.
I suppose then this is an unofficial companion podcast to the BBC Radio 4 drama, because this is not a BBC podcast, but it happens to be made by the people involved in that BBC production, which is a radio drama about the first radio drama. This episode will meet the cast, the crew, and the descendants of the characters involved. And we'll play you in full the short story version of The Truth About Father Christmas by Phyllis Twigg. It was Britain's first radio drama in 1922. The script was lost, but we found this short story version published 3 years later in 1925. That short story version then is the basis of my new Radio 4 drama, The Truth About Phyllis Twigg. You don't need to have heard our previous episodes of this podcast to enjoy this one, I think, but I think it would help if you've heard The Truth About Phyllis Twigg on Radio 4. If you're outside of the UK, I don't know if that means you'll be able to hear it or not, but give it a go on BBC Sounds. I'll link to it in the show notes. If you can't, I'm sure you'll still enjoy this episode, but if you can, hear the drama first, and then enjoy this Christmas special of 2025 of the British Broadcasting Century.
This is London Calling.
Hello, I'm Paul Kerensa. Thank you for joining us here on the British Broadcasting Century, episode 111. And if you've been with us for a while, you may recall episode 72 was The Truth About Phyllis Twigg. Well, this episode is The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, which is confusingly also the title of the radio drama we made for Radio 4. It airs Christmas Eve 2025, which is the same day that this podcast is released. Ideally, hear the drama first, and then peek behind the scenes of that recording and the true historical tale here on this episode. But as I say, if you can't hear the drama first, I'm sure you'll still enjoy this one. If you're new to the podcast, a very brief introduction. My name's Paul Kerensa. I am a writer and comedian and radio historian. We've been running this podcast for about 5 years now, and really looking at the fine-tuning of the early BBC backstory. And that includes finding lots of firsts of broadcasting. We've had episodes on the first BBC broadcast, the first political debate, the first comedian on the BBC, the first music, and indeed the first radio drama. Well, it turns out that wasn't quite as simple as one would first think. A lot of the history books credit 1924's Richard Hughes with his Comedy of Danger, but Arthur Burrows' 1924 book, The Story of Broadcasting, specifically mentions Christmas Eve 1922, The Truth About Father Christmas by Phyllis Twigg. So we'll revisit the backstory, we'll meet the cast and the crew of this latest radio drama, we'll meet some of the descendants of the characters involved, including the grandson and great-granddaughter of Arthur Burrows, someone we've mentioned on this podcast since the very beginning, and as far as I'm concerned, the person really responsible for British broadcasting as a whole, and the great-granddaughter of Phyllis Twigg, that under-heralded first radio dramatist. But co-anchoring us this episode will be our director of The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, part of B7 Media, who made it all possible. I had a good chat with Helen Quigley.
Well, you're recording. There's no point me recording, is there?
If only we had some sort of recording device.
Exactly. Well, that gets to the nub of the issue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The fact you couldn't record back then. So now you can record so much.
And as you can hear, we recorded this in the lunch break of the recording of the drama itself. Just couldn't quite work out who should be interviewing whom.
Are we beginning? Have we begun?
I think Rowan's just pressed
we're on-
record and
we're
he's
underway.
just
Helen Quigley.
So here we are at Soundhouse.
Yes.
Recording a long-awaited The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, written by Paul Kerensa, directed by me, thrown together, well, it feels a little bit like that, over 2.5 years, but we got there in the end. How did we get here, Paul?
How did we get here? Well, do you know, when you said it's been a long time coming, I thought you meant it's been 103 years coming. You know,
Well, it has.
It's been a very long time coming. In that
What
sense.
did we say in the tagline? Giving credit where credit's due, even if it takes 100 years to get it. 103 years.
That's it, isn't it? That's it. Well, yeah, I suppose in the more recent run of things, I was doing this research into how the BBC began in theory in time of the centenary, and then that came and went. But then as you delve further, you can find all of these lost, especially forgotten women at the start of things, it turns out. What are the chances?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because you highlighted quite a few of them in the talk that I saw you do in Chelmsford, birthplace of wireless.
Indeed.
And we seem to have focused on Phyllis specifically, and there were several. So why did Phyllis get the honour of an actual drama?
Well, good question. And in fact, it's a perfect time to state. I'll briefly whiz through a few others. Gertrude Donisthorpe, Britain's first DJ, Field in Worcester, 1917, overlooked. If you Google Gertrude Donisthorpe, all you'll find are websites I've made. And no one believes me because I'm a comedian, so they just go, you've made this up. You've got the first children's presenter, but there's no information. For example, the first children's presenter, there's nothing about her. She came and she went and she did nothing else. Phyllis Twigg, we have one paragraph in the first book on broadcasting, pretty much, by Arthur Burroughs, The Story of Broadcasting, 1924. And he says Phyllis Twigg wrote the first drama for radio. And yet history books seem to overlook that and say, oh, no, it was 2 years later, this other fella.
Oh, don't get me started on that. I actually dug out that little clip. I think you'd sent me it from a book. And I think I'd actually circled it in Photoshop and written FFS above it.
Yes,
because it annoyed
indeed
me
so.
so much. The exact words were, setting aside the truth about Father Christmas, the first radio drama was written by, and describes it.
Richard Hughes, Comedy of Danger. Yeah,
I'm like, hang on, setting aside.
Yes.
But in those two words, just obliterating a woman from history.
And there's been mention then of Phyllis Twigg in academic theses and things as writing the truth about Father Christmas.
Especially excellent academic works by Dr. Tina Pepler and Professor Tim Crook. Tim Crook has a very accessible blog which tells you all you need to know about Phyllis Twigg and other early female radio writers. Dr. Kevin Geddes as well has been instrumental in bringing Moira Mayne's tale back to light. And if you don't know who Moira Mayne is, then you haven't heard the drama. She's Phyllis Twigg. Dr. Andrea Smith, as well, has been super helpful in helping elevate Phyllis's tale and other under-heralded early women in BBC drama. So thank you to all of those marvellous academics.
But there's no script, and she's writing for children, whereas Richard Hughes, writing for grown-ups, there is a script, and it's been readapted over the years. So it was only then digging into Phyllis Twigg, myself and an academic, Professor Tim Crook, were both at the same time, for the head of the centenary, looking for Phyllis, essentially, in the archives. And we found...
She didn't help herself, though, with the name change.
She
really?
changed her name a few times. You know, the Moira Mayne was her pen name, but she also wrote under Puck the Painter and Pan the Piper and all. She'd like to do those.
She liked her
things.
alliteration.
She did, indeed. And also a sort of a hidden name change. The key to finding that Phyllis Twigg was Moira Mayne was a newspaper article from New Zealand where she's not even named Phyllis Twigg, but Mrs. G.W. Twigg, going by her husband's initials. And I was a bit aware for years, of course, that sometimes women go by their husband's initials. Some still do. Not thinking that makes it really difficult for people to find them in the archives if you're looking for them.
Makes a great plot twist in a drama, though.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's
got
a good
that,
twist. Exactly. And we've got that. So now we know Phyllis Twigg is Moira Mayne. We now know the first ever radio dramatist was also the world's first TV cook. So that's a nice thing, first TV chef. And but not only that, I could go back to the British Library and look for Moira Mayne writings. And that's where I discovered last year that The Truth About Father Christmas, this long-lost script, it's still long lost, but Phyllis readapted it as a short story under this other name, Moira Mayne. So it's been there on a shelf for 100 years. No one's known that is also the first ever radio play. So now we have it. To answer your question, why Phyllis? There's substance. We've got a story about her. And some of the others we just don't.
They're just facts.
We just don't know
Yes.
enough.
You know it happened, but there wasn't a story.
So as Helen and I discussed, perhaps one factor that meant Richard Hughes has sometimes got the credit as first radio dramatist is that his 1924 script survived. Phyllis's 1922 script was lost. So Richard Hughes' Comedy of Danger, still notable, first original radio play for adults, that could be re-recorded because they had the script, the tale retold, his place in the history books secured.
Here we are, my dear, buried alive.
Oh, Jack.
Alas, they will never find us.
But with no script for Phyllis Twigg's The Truth About Father Christmas, there could be no such re-recording. There still isn't a script, but now thanks to her short story, we've reenacted it in The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, so maybe excerpts like this can help secure her place in history as well.
Every word of this story is true. For the British Broadcasting Company now presents our first wireless play, The Truth About Father Christmas, by Mrs. Phyllis M. Twigg, as told by the Fairy Dust Man. Once upon a time, there was a party. Oh, look at the decorations.
Look at
Lovely
that.
party. Thank you so much. Oh, this looks wonderful. And a girl called Anne.
Look, Mummy. Jellies and biscuits and pink sugar cakes with cherries. Can I have some, please?
Not too much, Anne. We have Christmas lunch tomorrow. And, oh, look who this man is in the corner.
Mr. White?
Oh, I thought you was Father Christmas and the fairy dustman.
I'm the fairy dustman now, the real Father Christmas in a minute, and you're the man dressed up as him at this party.
Oh.
We will meet the cast shortly.
And I love Christmas as well. And it's about Christmas. It's a play for Christmas. And now it will be again, so that's lovely.
The BBC tried to schedule it a week earlier, and we had to go to them and say, you do realise that Christmas Eve is the anniversary? Oh, right, OK, yeah, we'll put it on Christmas Eve then. Right.
Good call.
Thank you, yeah.
Good call.
Let's talk a little bit about the drama we're actually recording today.
Yes.
Everyone's off having lunch. We're
They
not
are.
allowed to have lunch. We have two actors who were first and foremost people you were thinking of when we first were looking at cast.
Indeed so. And I've spent so long not saying their names out loud because I'm not allowed to.
Just in case they disappear.
We have Rory Kinnear, we have Tamsin Gregg, Tamsin as Phyllis, Rory playing Arthur Burrows. And I first pitched, before I even knew much about Phyllis, I pitched an idea as a Downton Abbey-esque TV drama to BBC 6 years ago, thinking for the centenary, let's do a televised dramatisation of how it all began. And they said no, but my original pitch, literally the first line says, as Arthur Burrows, think Rory Kinnear. That's the ideal casting. And the ideal casting is now out there having a sandwich, and that's really exciting.
I think he's a bit bored of meringue now, though.
He's had a lot of meringues, because that's what Arthur Burrows originally used to have on the fly. He's had the meringue. So,
but not beer. We've not plied him with beer.
No, that's true.
Yet.
It's beer meringues. We've made Rory eat a lot of meringues today. But yeah, I just saw Rory as Arthur Burrows to begin with. I think based on when Rory was playing in Count Arthur Strong, that sort of sense of the one person who is sane in an insane universe, which you sort of get in the character of Michael in Count Arthur Strong. And same with Arthur Burrows. I thought this is a guy who has a singular vision of how broadcasting would be. He's the first voice of the BBC. He wrote about broadcasting as an idea in 1918 and started saying we should use wireless as this to broadcast entertainment, and no one would listen to him. So he sort of had this. He was like a lone voice in the wilderness doing this. At the time we find him in this story, the BBC's underway by about a month. He's done. He's opened the BBC. He's now on every night reading the news and doing children's programmes as Uncle Arthur, and he's director of programmes. So he is manic, and he hears about Phyllis Twigg with her idea for a radio drama, and so that's where we find ourselves. And Tamsin Gregg was my ideal for Phyllis Twigg as well. She's fantastic and she's brilliant. And Tamsin mentioned Phyllis Twigg on stage at an event a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, that's nice. Tamsin seems to be vaguely aware of Phyllis Twigg.
And let's meet some of the cast then, shall we? As Arthur Burrows, we have Rory Kinnear. As Phyllis Twigg, you have Tamsin Gregg. And as Marconi engineer Mr. White, Will Harrison Wallace.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Gregg, and this is...
Rory Kinnear.
And this is...
Will Harrison Wallace.
And for me, it was a wonderful experience getting to know the character of Arthur Matthews and his...
Arthur Matthews? Did you get to know him?
No, I didn't.
This one
Who
was
was it,
Arthur Burrows.
Arthur?
But no, I was playing Arthur Matthews, playing Arthur Burrows.
Oh, were you?
Yes.
Is that in the script?
You didn't get
No, I didn't read that part of the
There were
script.
so many Easter eggs of comedy writers within the script. Unfortunately, I did have to
Mr.
work...
Mannering.
Unfortunately, I just have to work with Tamsin Gregg again.
But we didn't have to kiss in this one, so it was really good. I had a lovely time playing Phyllis Twigg and having a small twig at my side playing my daughter.
She was wonderful. And I just had to be a bad actor, which was...
I don't know why they asked you. I think it's sort of rude, is it? Yeah.
They asked me to be a bad actor doing bad Scandinavian.
Yeah,
which
but
we'll see how that comes out.
A lot of fun doing a Christmas story with a great big heart. Well done, Paul Kerensa.
Oh, you're very, very kind. But this is a story that's remained hidden for 100 years. So hurrah for Phyllis, I suppose I'm trying to say, really. And she's the first TV cook and the first radio dramatist. And all of you have given so much to radio drama over the years. So I like to think this is a culmination in a many way of because it's how it began, and it's a delight to celebrate how it began, I suppose.
And how wonderful that we'll never work again. Now we've reached this culmination.
Of course,
it's a great way to go out.
Phyllis would have wanted.
Yes, well done, Phyllis. Thank you.
Explode in a blaze of glory.
Well, and twooly twigged.
Twooly
twigged.
I'm sure that Phyllis would be that could think of no better cast to bring her tale.
She was a huge Green Wing fan.
She was.
And Count Arthur Strong, evidently.
Thank you so much for doing it. Really
It's been
appreciate
great.
it.
It's been
Thank
a lovely
you.
day.
Thanks, Paul.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
3 of our brilliant cast from our 1920s storyline. They were joined by Hayden Watts, wonderful as our lift boy, and Flora Sainer as Anne Twigg. We will come back to her shortly. It's a split timeline, though. In The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, my radio drama about the first radio drama, we've got scenes set in 2025 as well. A fictitious podcaster tracking down Phyllis Twigg. I don't know who that could be based on. I spoke to the actress who plays Jenny, our sleuth on the trail of Twigg, a brilliant newcomer, Asia Dodd.
Well, when I first found out about the project and was told about your podcast, I thought, well, I should probably just pop over and listen to a bit of what Paul has to say. And yeah, I found it really interesting, the history of it. I mean, obviously, I work as a journalist in radio, so I have a natural interest in that area anyway. And obviously I'm an actor as well, so I thought the character of Jenny was really fun, and she's just a bit of a force of nature and a bull in a china shop as well. And that was quite fun to play.
Well, you embodied that perfectly. So exactly.
Thank you.
You brought the chaotic energy. It brought some nice energy and inertia to it. I think there is this nice contrast between this rather staid sort of, official BBC thing, and then the modern day stuff, which has got this sort of panicky energy to it that wanting to get this fictitious podcast recorded, of course, fictitious entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I was going for chaos with Jenny. I'm glad that came across.
I enjoyed particularly, some of the ways we had those scenes with the British Library with research there, and then recording on a phone in the hushed tones. I was at the British Library not long ago, and I saw a fella take a loud phone call in this otherwise silent reading room. So it does happen. But then the way you did that and then sort of just rush, just fix that, put that together, will you, Rajesh? Just make it all happen. And it just added this sense of, also the Christmas rush, that rush we all have before Christmas to get things done. And this had to be part of that as well.
Of course, yeah. Everyone goes crazy at Christmas. I used to work in retail, so I know the panic in people's eyes.
Yes, exactly. We had to sort of, obviously the present day story that you're involved in with the podcast is sort of fictionalized, but based on a bit of, I kind of think of Jenny as a little bit of half of Jenny is complete fiction, and the other half breaks into sort of thirds, which is a bit me, a bit Professor Tim Crook, who was also researching Phyllis Twigg at the time, and then a bit Karina, Phyllis Twigg's great granddaughter, who we hear on this podcast elsewhere, who's been thoroughly enthused to dig deeper further into Phyllis Twigg. But the sort of, obviously, to up the drama, we had to sort of get a sense of, you need a deadline, in the latter half of any good story, you need to get clocks ticking, so we had this mad rush to get it made onto a podcast for you, which had to be before Christmas because the studio was going to close or something, But in reality, of course, there was no deadline, but it just took months. And for myself and Tim Crook, and indeed Karina's, she's still looking into it all now. So there's lots of stuff to find out about this otherwise unknown woman. It's unjust, isn't it?
Well, it is, yes. And, I do think of myself as a feminist. So, it's feminist history. So it's good to be part of telling that story. And it is terrible that, I didn't know anything about Phyllis Twigg until about 3 months ago. And, in a way that's just crazy because I'm a woman working in radio and I didn't even know that she was a pioneer.
This is one of the few things where you're talking about a thing at the start by actually making a version of it today. So there was a moment, it just kind of felt like, this isn't just any radio drama. This is a radio drama about radio drama, and it's all a bit meta, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes, I was going to say it all got a bit meta.
Well, thank you for bringing Jenny to life, and I feel that we need a sequel now to see what Jenny does next.
Yeah, well, I want to find out, so let me know.
Yeah, good on you.
Back in the 1920s timeline, Phyllis has a daughter, Anne Twigg. And I ummed for a while when writing the drama and plotting this tale. Do we include the daughter character? I'm glad we did. Here is director Helen Quigley to tell us who we cast.
And we should mention we're introducing a new young actress to the airwaves.
It's true.
With a proper pedigree. We have a young Flora playing her own... Hang on, let me get this right. She's playing her own great-grandmother.
That's correct.
She's playing the little girl, Anne Twigg.
The first ever radio play was about Phyllis, this character, having this dream, and her daughter, Anne, wants to be told about what is Father Christmas and who is this idea of Father Christmas, and Phyllis has this dream and then tells her. So we needed an Anne character. We needed a child actor to play Anne Twigg, this sort of 6-7-year-old. And who better to play Anne Twigg than, her own great-granddaughter.
Yes.
That's quite wonderful.
So throughout this process, I have had a small family tree on the wall of my office. So whenever someone says to me, who is this and what's their relationship to Phyllis, I go, the thing, and there's the great,
Totally.
great, yes. So obviously Flora's mum is directly descended. So we have two
Indeed.
Twigs from the same branch.
We have
today.
two Twigs coming in. Yeah, I'm working with Flora's mum, Karina. We're working on a biography of Phyllis. Karina's done a whole heap of research.
Well, let us meet Karina then, great-granddaughter and now biographer of Phyllis Twigg. And very shortly, I'll play you the recording made by Karina, her daughter Flora, and myself of the short story version of The Truth About Father Christmas. But to introduce it, here is Karina Sainer.
Okay, so I'm here with Phyllis Twigg's great-granddaughter, Karina. Hello, Karina Sainer. Nice to see you.
Paul.
Thank you for being here. Where have we just been?
Well, we have just walked over Waterloo Bridge from Me Hotel, which is a luxury hotel on the site of the former Marconi house.
And they've got a nice atrium space there. And this Christmas, probably just finishing at the time this podcast goes out, but they've been brilliant at partnering with us, literally with us, as we re-recorded the story.
Yes, we have been recording the story of The Truth About Father Christmas. I've been playing the role of Phyllis, telling the tale. Paul has gamely stepped into the role of Father Christmas himself.
Ho, ho, ho.
A role originally played, of course, by Arthur Burrows. And my daughter, so Phyllis's great-great-granddaughter, plays her own great-grandmother, Anne Twigg, who was, of course, the little gal who inspired the story of The Truth About Father Christmas.
Wonderful. And
if that makes sense.
And who'd have thought? So it was episode 72 of this podcast. We were talking about Phyllis Twigg, the under-heralded first radio dramatist. And now here we are bringing the story back to, well, just metres away from where it was first broadcast, which is quite incredible in this year or two of... Man, it's been a busy year or two, hasn't it?
It has indeed. Well, we're, I suppose, trying to right a wrong and get some justice for Phyllis in that she was the first radio dramatist, and credit went elsewhere, as has been previously discussed. So thank you, Paul, for telling us about everything that Phyllis did, and we're enjoying telling her story. We're working together. We're trying to write her biography.
We are. We're trying to right the wrong in a very righty kind of way, aren't we? And it's not. I mean, it really takes. It's been a team doing this, really. I think because there's been. Obviously, I've been doing it yourself. Professor Tim Crook has done acres of research, if you can have research in acres. Helen Quigley at B7 Media has been really getting behind it and getting this radio drama to the air, Radio 4. The brilliant cast, Radio 4 Drama Commissioner. We could do with a publisher or literary agent to get the book going.
That would help. That would really help.
That's a missing team member. That is a missing team member that would really help land the book on shelves.
Well, it's a great tale. It's a great tale, and it deserves to be told.
And we've written. It's half written, isn't it? The book's half done, so we just need to finish it and then find the people who make it.
2026.
Get it to market. Come on, people. So, lastly, then, what you've seen the script of this drama that I've put together for Radio 4, and I was very nervous for you to even see this. Go, oh no, have I represented Phyllis okay? But what have I got wrong? What liberties have I taken?
Well, obviously it's a wonderful script.
It's an entertainment. Well, it's kind of you, but it's an entertainment. I had to fictionalise some elements, so it's worth drawing on those.
There may be a few liberties in there. I suppose one of them to point out is that my great-grandfather Garnet. I worry that maybe he didn't get such a fair representation in this drama as perhaps he had. He, I think, was a wonderful daddy. There was a lot of love there for his daughter, I believe, but artistic license and time constraints.
You'll have to take that with the writer. Oh, you are, and you have, and this is what this is now. I can only apologise. I'm very sorry.
So justice for Garnet as well.
And do you know what? I think it's worth. This is no defence at all, but my defence is on the two fronts. One is that ultimately to tell a piece of fiction, drama, entertainment, Radio 4 were always very keen and eager to make sure that fiction came first and that historical truth was secondary. But it sort of felt like we needed someone as a counterpoint to Phyllis's optimism and getting the job done. So there's partly having Garnet sort of being a little bit of a naysayer on that, but also he didn't even say he was a naysayer because we had no budget for an actor. So then I was thinking, it would be lovely to include the character of Garnet, her husband, a little, and then I thought, could we include him by his absence in some way, by the fact he doesn't say anything. She knocks on the door to try and speak to him and he doesn't reply.
And he was a hard-working doctor. I mean, you're right in that respect. So he may well not have been as present as he'd like to.
I would like to apologise formally, and this is that apology. I'm sorry. And I suppose the other liberty we've taken is, where was Phyllis on Christmas Eve when this was being broadcast? And if you listen to the Radio 4 drama, she is there in the studio with her daughter, and they are playing themselves in this drama.
And I think that's a wonderful speculation, and I would love it to be true. And it may well have been true. We just don't know for sure, and I don't suppose that we ever will know for sure. Certainly they lived on the Isle of Wight. Train travel was possible, absolutely. It could have been feasible. She was certainly forthright and strident, and certainly went on to become an actor in her own right on radio and TV during the 1930s. So she would have loved that if it did happen, that was her first bit of acting. So it's a lovely bit of speculation,
But it is speculation. It's a reach, isn't it? It is a reach. And in terms of Phyllis's own writings and her diaries and journals and notes and things, she's not given us many clues either way, has she? When she talks about that, the very brief moment she talks about that first radio play, she doesn't say there I was at home listening to it, nor there I was in the studio.
No.
But you'd have thought if she'd either heard it or hadn't heard it, or was in it or wasn't in it, it would be lovely if there were a sentence that just nudged towards that.
Well, we certainly know she had the radio set. Because she was given that in lieu of payment for that drama. Obviously, in those early days, there probably wasn't really a budget per se, but she was given the radio. But yes, she hasn't commented either way in her diary, or the diaries that we have today. So who knows? Who knows?
We'll never know. But it's been a joy to try and delve into this. We continue writing the biography.
Absolutely.
And watch this space. And we'll introduce as well, if you'd like to hear us reenact that first story, you can either go to Me London, if they're still playing it in their atrium, where with headphones on you can listen at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Every day they've been playing this in their lounge there, or you can listen to it now, here.
The truth about Father Christmas. Every word of this story is true. 5 years ago, when my little girl Anne was 5 years old, she received a scarlet envelope addressed to herself and sealed with a gold seal. Dear Anne, said the letter, will you come to a party on Christmas Eve to meet Father Christmas? At first, that party had seemed perfect. The tea was just right.
There were chocolate biscuits, pink sugar cakes with cherries, ices and orange jellies.
Anne was given the shining silver-winged fairy doll of the tip-top branch of the very tall tree. Father Christmas took it down for her himself and promised to answer the letter that we had written to him and posted up our nursery chimney. Now I will tell you the rest of Anne's doings at the party in her own words.
I was so happy, Mummy. I had to tell someone how glad I was that Father Christmas had got our letter. I told a big boy because he looked nice and kind. He was horrid and unkind. He laughed and said that Father Christmas was only an ordinary man dressed up.
She was so miserable that she cried and cried, begging me to tell her that the big boy hadn't spoken the truth.
Oh, do say Father Christmas is real,
she sobbed. I tucked her into bed and promised that I would explain next morning. I knew very well that there is a true spirit of kindness that walks abroad on Christmas Day. Thinking of this, I went to bed. It seemed but a few minutes before I awoke, knowing that someone was calling me in the kindest, most wonderful voice I have ever heard.
Won't you tell your child the truth about me?
I knew it was Father Christmas himself who had come to me. But though I longed to open my eyes, I dared not look, for fear he should go away.
Tell the children I was born in an eastern city,
continued the voice.
Tell them that I played and had fun just as they do today. When I grew up, I studied the stars and became what is known as a wise man. But I was not wise enough, for when 3 friends of mine urged me to join them in a long, difficult journey in search of the Christ child at Bethlehem, I would not go. Led by a star, my friends, the 3 wise men, travelled many miles to take presents to the Christ child. Many years later, one who had known him told me of his love for children. So I determined that though it was too late to offer him any gifts, as my friends had done, I would do something in his name for the children he had loved. I decided that on Christmas Day, I would try to make all little ones happy.
But that was hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I said. How is it you are still alive?
Oh, the body I had in those days died, but my spirit, spirit means the marvellous, everlasting spark of life that dwells in all mankind, entered into the bodies of others.
He continued.
Far across the lands of the world I travelled, hidden as thoughts in the hearts of mothers, who on the Christ child's birthday gave their own dear babies gifts in memory of him. When I reached Russia, the children made a picture of me in their own minds, and they called me St. Nicholas. In Scandinavia, they said I drove in a sleigh with silver bells and reindeer, for they thought I needed something to carry me over the snow. In southern Europe, forest trees were decorated in my honour, as they had been for the old forest gods. That, of course, was the beginning of Christmas trees. Christmas stockings began when I reached the island you live in. The grand pagan custom of dragging home the Yule log to burn in the open fireplaces was still kept up. One bitter frosty night, a child with a loving heart, fearing I would be cold after my long journey, hung up his little stockings. "A gift for you," he called softly up the chimney. I feel neither heat nor cold, but the little one's unselfish thought so pleased me that I filled his stockings brimful of toys, just as your child's are filled on Christmas morning. Remember, it is always the spirit that matters most. The children love dressing up. Explain to them that it is always the real Father Christmas spirit that comes. They like to think of me dressed in scarlet, as bright as holly berries, and with a white beard to match the newly fallen snow. Ho, ho.
The wonderful voice ceased, but I lay and thought over what he had said. I felt happy to remember how the Christmas spirit makes even the crossest and snarliest people glad. In the morning, I explained it all to Anne, and Father Christmas, so gracious, so loving, so friendly to the lonely, seemed more real to her than he had ever done before.
We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we travel so far. Field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Well, a huge thanks to Me London Hotel. That's right next to what was the first BBC studio at Marconi House. Thank you for recording that for us and for featuring it this December at their Atrium Lounge, where guests have been able to hear this, just metres from where radio drama began in Britain. And thank you for letting us share that here. So you've heard from Karina and Flora, Phyllis Twigg's great and great-great-granddaughters, but we have other descendants to meet as well. We've mentioned Arthur Burrows on this podcast since the earliest days. First voice of the BBC, a prophet of broadcasting 4 years before the BBC began. To my knowledge, the BBC, books, documentaries, anything else you care to mention, have never really found or spoken to Arthur Burrows' descendants. So I'm hugely excited to introduce you to Arthur Burrows' grandson and great-granddaughter, who I spoke to all the way from South Africa, father and daughter, Nick Heel and Philippa Heel. So you've worked with, was it BBC Films and indeed broadcasting today as well?
Yeah, one of my first jobs was with BBC Films. Actually, two of my first jobs, and I had no idea, I had no idea about Arthur Burrows. Until very recently, actually, when I contacted you. And I mean, the reason, as you know, I contacted you is because I thought it would be an amazing thing for my children to have a recording of...
their great-grandfather's
Yes,
voice.
yes. No, of your voice.
Yes.
Reading The Truth About Father Christmas. So,
yes.
So really, I mean, my dad had mentioned Arthur Burrows maybe 10, 15 years ago, but then it's only when I contacted you that it really became something,
Yeah. Well, it's something that I'm training up to do, but I had to read a sermon at prep school, and being dyslexic, I got it all back to front and became the church's sort of comedian and had a stigma ever since.
What got you so interested in this to begin with?
Well, it's down to him, really. So I do this as this podcast, and I do a live show, which my original way was trying to write a historical novel, fictionalising history by getting behind these people a bit. So I'm trying to fictionalise your own ancestor in a way and sort of dramatise the thought processes they had. So in fact, my way in, to answer your question, was this book, which I got about 10 years ago. I was writing a book on the history of Christmas, looking into why it was that so much of like the London-centric Christmas, the Dickensian, the Victorian Christmas seemed to go worldwide. And it seemed to be the BBC largely, once you reach different parts of the world. And so I got this book. Arthur says the BBC began with 4 employees and 30,000 listeners. And I thought, who are those 4? How do you run the BBC with 4 people? And he's one of them. And I just found the story fascinating. Yeah.
He sadly went into orbit about a month before I arrived. So I never met him. And for some strange reason, my mother and her 2 brothers really never spoke about him. I mean, I knew very little about what he did, although I was led to believe that Lord Reith was an egotist, maybe on a par with Donald Trump, and therefore it was only he who formed the BBC single-handed.
I really think the one person who was behind it more than anyone was Arthur Burrows. Nick and Philippa Heel will return on the podcast in 2026. More to say about Arthur Burrows, the first voice of the BBC, and the man who played Father Christmas in The Truth About Father Christmas. Now back to our studio day recording The Truth About Phyllis Twigg and its director, Helen Quigley. I'm very excited to be here. And I think Tamsin earlier said, you don't look, you are excited. Oh, I can't tell. The thing is, I know that if I were to express how I actually feel about this situation, I would be grinning like a Cheshire cat and leaping off the roof. So I'm very excited that this has come together. I mean, not so much, it's always lovely as a writer to see a thing performed and made and recorded, but to actually, for me, it feels more so like the justice that we're bringing back to.
Yeah, and I was getting rightly cross about it for a number of reasons. And actually, when it was the 100th anniversary of the BBC, I think there was Your Story was there, and you were doing the rounds doing your An Evening of Very Old Radio and History of the BBC. And, of course, living in Chelmsford, you live with that legacy of it being the birthplace of wireless. The Marconi factory's still there. The old hut isn't in Brickell, unfortunately.
Yes.
The pub is, where is it Peter Eckersley used to drink?
Yeah, it's now an Indian restaurant. It's very nice.
Yeah, I've not been there. I should try that. But not only did I see that story, but people were sending me it and going, do you know this about this Phyllis Twigg person? This would make a great drama.
Right.
And then you came along to Chelmsford, and that's when I cornered you and went, hello, I'm a radio producer.
Yes.
And then I went and listened to the podcast, which in that point you'd said, are there any radio producers out there who want to make a drama of this? I'm like, me, please.
Yes.
I'd like to do
I listened to that back to my own podcast about it on the way here today.
Oh,
I thought
did
I'd better
you?
do some research. And I grinned like a loon when I heard the bit of me saying, any radio producers want to turn this into a thing? I thought, we're doing it now. This is it. It's lovely.
Yay.
Dreams can come true.
Helen Quigley, director, and Andrew Mark Sewell, producer at B7 Media, have been golden at turning this into a production that I really hope listeners enjoy. I hope you, dear listener, have enjoyed it if you've heard it. You will have heard then the hidden masterwork of Eloise Whitmore, our incredible sound designer. I think she's done a superb job picking out the 1920s sounds, authentic, immersive. Our great studio manager was Rowan, and there is a lovely original song in the production as well. Hannah Brine gave us Dear Santa, a wonderful original work in our later coffee shop scene. But most of our music is the original composition of a man that I never thought we'd get for this. And we did. I just asked Helen, our director, if we could get as composer someone like Neil Brand. And Helen said, well, how about Neil Brand? And now here he is, composer and now podcaster of a wonderful new series all about the music with Neil Brand. It's Neil Brand.
I'm pleased to have been asked. I haven't done very much radio drama as a composer for a little while because budgets just haven't allowed it, and that's fine. I get it. But also I was delighted to be asked anyway, but I was even more delighted to be asked because I might know something about the period. If I have to justify my existence, it is simply that I know a bit more about 20th century culture than some other people do. So to be hired on that basis was very nice indeed. So thank you. And thanks, Helen.
Oh, no, I'm delighted. Well, it is a niche thing, isn't it? That sort of, we're talking like 1922, early BBC, but even it's away from the BBC, that era. I just love it, that era. And knowing, I discovered your work via, I think it was the Kermode and Mayo podcast originally, and then hearing you on the film programme and other things on Radio 4. But that music and history crossover, that seems to have been in your DNA, or your industrially speaking, for many years now.
Yeah, I think initially what has always prodded me to work and to do creative work particularly is music and story. And that's always fascinated me. And for a long time with radio, I basically produced plays which were stories based on historical events, but that more and more and more used the music to tell the story. And the sort of high point for me eventually was about 3 or 4 years ago when the BBC Symphony Orchestra commissioned me to do an adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, which I was able to adapt and then set to music to be played live. And I got Mark Gatiss to play Sherlock and Sanjeev Bhaskar to play Watson, and we had actors on stage. And they filmed it. They went out on Christmas Day 3 years ago. And that's sort of the peak of what I've always wanted to do, which was to make music tell stories. So the music's all there is. There's no sound effects, there's actors, there's just voices and music. Mm-hmm. And that has always fascinated me. So the fact that you were doing a play about radio, early radio plays, but also the 2LO Orchestra, about which I knew nothing, really fascinated me. Mm. As you say, that period is really interesting. And something that I spend a lot of time talking to people about who ask me about my job as a silent film pianist is that you've got to be aware that in the teens, 20s and earlier, music was much more central to everybody's daily life than it is now. Mm. Even without, radios, the net, etc., more people heard live music than anybody does today. Yeah. It was just part of their wallpaper. It was in the bandstands during the summer. It was in their churches. It was in their concert halls. And there were probably 4, maybe 5 times the number of musicians fully employed as musicians then than there are now, because it was a kind of everyday job. Playing for an ensemble, whether it was on a local basis, even, let's say, in the local cinema, or if you were playing for the BBC's 2LO. And so that kind of sense of a kind of everyday musicianship, a sort of quotidian musicianship, where you turn up, you weren't sure what you were going to be playing, you play through it a couple of times, you probably have a cigarette in your mouth if you were playing something that didn't require blowing. That's the other thing I love, is that you see orchestras from that time and all the string players have got fags in their mouths. You just think, God, they must never have taken them out.
Do you think woodwind and brass were jealous, looking over, going, "Oh, I can't wait for my cigarette"?
I'm sure they were. Brass, particularly, probably made up for the lack of smoke with alcohol, I would imagine. But that kind of thing of chaps turning up and, oh, well, we're doing this Christmas thing today. It really fascinated me, and I was very keen. Also, I wanted to try and find out what the lineup that you told me they had would roughly sound like when it came to playing. It was particularly the percussion, right? The fact that they had a percussionist. Now today, I have to tell you, if you're a composer working with anything that's going to be happening live, as soon as you say percussion, they go, "Oh no." The porterage they're going to have to pay doubling because they're going to be playing multiple instruments, blah, 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 blah. Whereas, if you were in the 2LO orchestra and you were a percussionist, you damn well brought your percussion. You had it all there, So you had chimes, you had xylophone, you probably had a celeste, you had a glockenspiel, you probably had tips too, maybe. And you were turning your hand to all of those, probably with a cigarette sticking out the corner of your mouth.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, it is just lovely. You read often in the listings back then, because of course there's no recording. There's one recording of the 20s, and that's it as far as the BBC goes. So it's all about what you read, really, and the pictures. There's very few pictures you can find, and it's that idea that the very early BBC Marconi House, this small little converted cinema, ironically, used to be training films for the Marconi engineers, but so pokey and there's no room there, so there's only like 7 or 8 members of the orchestra, just because that's all they could fit, until they got the bigger studio down the road a year later.
I think I've seen a picture of a live radio drama from the States where you've got a little ensemble of musicians crammed into a corner, and the actors on the mics in front, and no baffling between them. So basically, once the band started, they were there. They were 10 feet away from the mics, and the actors were 3 feet away from the mics, and you had to just mix on that basis, which I thought was just fascinating.
Neil will return to us in 2026, I'm sure, on the podcast. And do check out his podcast, all about the music. I know this is a long episode, but it's a bumper one for Christmas, and it's not every day that you finally get onto today's BBC with a story about the early BBC. So forgive my excitement and for going on a little bit this time. Here's our director, Helen Quigley.
It's been a lot of work, a lot of fun, and I've put quite a bit of heart and soul into this as well, as anyone who I've banged onto about it has realised.
It's been tireless work. I thank you for the opportunity. It's just wonderful that you've run with it, and we've run to this point here. And I got all the tingles earlier hearing. Of course, you sometimes record things out of order. We just having heard the last scene, the last moment where Tamsin plays this Phyllis as the first television chef, essentially the ancestor of Nigella and literally of Jamie Oliver, when she's introducing a show called Quarter of an Hour Meals that Jamie Oliver did decades later.
Yeah. Did it first.
And she's there in 1936, and just hearing Tamsin doing these sort of crisp tones of where, and because also the Phyllis journey that I hate to say the word journey, but I just did, the way she starts off and she's a little unsure of what broadcasting is and what she can offer to it, I think, to a degree, and then she writes this radio play, and then 14 years after that brings us the first ever TV cookery programme, and just hearing Tamsin deliver that, and I just thought, it just feels
it's alive.
Feels right that suddenly Phyllis has arrived and brings, she's the only person, male or female, I can find, I have looked, who starts 2 genres of radio drama and TV cookery. I can't find anyone else who brings us 2 things.
I do get righteously angry when she's misaccredited on that as well, because Fanny Craddock, broadly known as the first television cook, and you're like, no,
exactly,
foot stamp, no.
Yes, I do hear a lot of people go, I thought it was such and such, often Fanny Craddock or someone else, and they go, okay, it's good that you did think that. Well, now don't think that, because now you know better.
Yeah.
So I do feel like, but at the same time, we do. And you've been very good at telling me constantly. We are making a drama here. We are not wagging our finger in a sort of history lecture way. So I've tried to get in bits of history, but at the same time, it's meant to be a fun, entertaining.
Yeah, I think, like I said
Christmas.
earlier, we've been quite liberal in a couple of places with the facts, but equally there are some facts in there that are so pedantic.
Oh, yes.
That are just nice to leave in as
yeah.
notes. Notes to history, notes to us.
If you would like to know in even greater detail the bits and pieces where we were liberal with historical truth in The Truth About Phyllis Twigg, the bits maybe where we aimed for accuracy, the bits where we aimed for entertainment, my thoughts generally on it, moment by moment, then on Patreon, I am recording a writer's commentary. I don't know if that's really a done thing in the world of radio drama. It's rather tricky to listen to two voices at once, but let's give it a go. So on that, I'm listening to the full drama and commentating on it, Cecil Lewis style. For those who know, you know. He used to do that in the early days, annoying many opera fans. You can join us then on patreon.com/Paul Kerensa, PaulKerensa. It's £5 a month. You can cancel any time, and you can hear this 45-minute walkthrough of The Truth About Phyllis Twigg. It's literally a walkthrough, because I recorded the commentary while actually walking from Broadcasting House, today's BBC, to Marconi House. That was a meander through central London after I'd just done a pause for thought for Radio 2 with Scott Mills, which I do now and then, and this one was all about, you guessed it, The Truth About Father Christmas by Phyllis Twigg. It's pretty much all I'm talking about this month. Next episode, it'll change. We'll move on to something new, Broadcasting the Barricades, a 1926 shocking broadcast that terrified listeners. But that's next time. For now, the Patreon video awaits patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can hear that writer's commentary. Link is in the show notes. And thanks to all who do, or who have, or who might support on Patreon. I genuinely think without that support there, this Phyllis Twigg tale would never have happened. It takes a village. Thank you, village. And my thanks to everyone you've heard this episode. Director Helen Quigley, the descendants of those wonderful radio pioneers, Karina Sainer, Nick Heel, Philippa Heel. We salute your ancestors, Phyllis Twigg and Arthur Burrows. Thanks to the actors Rory Kinnear, Tamsin Gregg, Will Harrison Wallace, Asia Dodd. Composer Neil Brand. Thanks to Andrew Mark Sewell from B7 Media as well. Thanks to Alison Hindle and Sharon and everyone at Radio 4 Drama Commissioning for making this happen. And thanks to the academics, especially Professor Tim Crook, who have helped bring Phyllis Twigg's achievements to light. Thanks most of all to Phyllis Twigg. Justice for Phyllis. We got there. If you haven't heard it, of course, The Truth About Phyllis Twigg is available on BBC Sounds for the next 30 days. If you enjoy it, hey, why not write to the BBC and tell them? There's always feedback at bbc.co.uk, but of course only do that if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, keep it to yourself. This podcast has been the epitome of self-indulgence, but it's Christmas. It's a time to be indulgent. Next time on the podcast, something rather different. We leap forward to 1926 for one episode only, because it's another centenary moment. You've heard of the War of the Worlds and Orson Welles' shocking broadcast that apparently terrified a nation. Well, firstly, did they fall for it? Next episode's guest, Brad Schwartz, isn't quite sure. His book, Broadcast Hysteria, is fantastic. I'm rereading it at the minute, and I highly recommend it for your late Christmas list. Broadcast Hysteria by Brad Schwartz, link in the show notes to that. He joins us next time to talk about the BBC 1926 equivalent of the War of the Worlds fake news broadcast. It's Broadcasting the Barricades with Father Ronald Knox, when he gave a bizarre and quite funny fake news report about London being taken over, but were listeners taken in. Find out next time. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please do share it, subscribe, of course. And if you look in the show notes, you'll find things like my mailing list, details of my live show, An Evening of Very Old Radio, that plays in Norfolk in January. Then there's a new show I'm doing for Leicester Comedy Festival called Four Monarchs and a Mic, the tale of the BBC's Royal Engineer. And other updates generally. If you go to tiny.cc/PK update, you can join my mailing list, and I'll keep you informed of all the goings-on. Some other radio bits and pieces I'm doing, and we're currently writing the next series of Not Going Out, Lee Mack's sitcom. That will be on later in 2026. Speaking of which, I wish you a very happy New Year, and if I've caught you in time, a very Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. The British Broadcasting Century is a solo-operated podcast Not made by the BBC, just made by Paul Kerensa. Original music is by Will Farmer. And thanks to you if you like, subscribe, share and review this podcast. And thanks as ever to our Patreon supporters who keep all of this afloat. Do join them if you'd like to. Thank you for listening. Do join us next time for the centenary of Broadcasting the Barricades, the fake news broadcast of 1926, as we embrace 2026. And thank you for being here for 2025 and the whole of this British broadcasting century.